Toulon, 1793, a port city sitting on the edge of the Mediterranean, soaked in revolution, betrayal, and foreign ambition. It was here, amid smoke, fire, and absolute chaos, that a young artillery officer named Napoleon Bonaparte would step out of the shadows forever. But do not picture a mighty general commanding vast armies. Not yet. This is the story of a nobody, a young officer with sharp eyes, a sharper mind, and a plan so audacious that even his own superiors could not ignore him. Welcome back to Research Histogram, where history is not just remembered, it is felt. I'm glad you are here for episode 3 of our Napoleon Bonaparte series. In episode 2, we watched Napoleon lose his homeland forever. We watched his family flee Corsica in the middle of the night. We watched him make a decision that changed everything. He was no longer a Corsican. He was French. Completely and dangerously French. And now, France needed him. The young French Republic was in absolute crisis. Enemies surrounded it from every direction. Foreign powers wanted to crush the revolution before it spread to their own kingdoms. And inside France itself, not everyone was happy with the new order. Nowhere was this more obvious than in Toulon. The royalists of Toulon had grown tired of the revolution. Fed up, frustrated, and desperate, they made a decision that shocked the entire republic. They opened the city gates to the British and Spanish. Just like that, they invited the enemy in. Admiral Hood and his powerful fleet sailed into Toulon harbour with open arms and wide smiles. The royalists celebrated. They believed the foreign powers would crush the revolution once and for all. But Toulon was not just any city. It was the home of the French Mediterranean fleet. Whoever controlled Toulon controlled the Mediterranean Sea. It was the most strategically important port in all of southern France. The Republic could not afford to lose it, so they did what governments always do when things go terribly wrong. They sent an army. Unfortunately, the army they sent was not exactly the stuff of legend. Leading the forces was General Carteau, a man who, and this is being extremely charitable, had the military instincts of a confused house painter, which, incidentally, is exactly what he was before the revolution. Picture him now, standing outside the walls of Toulon, scratching his head, completely clueless about what to do next. His brilliant strategy? Throw men at the walls, again and again and again. It was not working. This is where Napoleon Bonaparte enters the story. He arrived in Toulon as the new chief of artillery, a role that sounded secondary, almost unimportant compared to the glamour of cavalry or infantry command. But Napoleon did not see it that way. From the moment he arrived, he studied the battlefield. He walked the terrain. He examined the geography with the focus of a man who already knew the answer to a question nobody else was asking, and then he saw it. The key to Toulon was not Toulon itself. The key was a small rocky promontory overlooking the harbour called l'Aiguillette. If the French could seize that high ground, they could position their artillery directly above the harbour. They could rain fire down on Hood's fleet. The British ships would have no choice but to retreat, and without the British fleet, the royalists inside Toulon would collapse. Simple, elegant, brilliant. But first, Napoleon had to convince his superiors. Carteau and his commanders were obsessed with storming the city walls directly. Like medieval knights banging their heads against a castle gate. Napoleon argued, pushed back, insisted. He was 24 years old, unknown, and telling senior commanders they were completely wrong. It took patience. It took persistence. It took the kind of quiet, burning confidence that only Napoleon Bonaparte possessed. Eventually, out of pure desperation, more than any real belief, Carteau gave in. The plan was approved. Napoleon wasted no time. He organized his artillery with the precision of a surgeon and the creativity of an artist. To anyone watching, cannons might seem straightforward, point and shoot. But Napoleon treated each gun like an instrument in an orchestra, carefully positioned, perfectly timed, building toward one devastating crescendo. The bombardment that followed was relentless. Meanwhile, Admiral Hood had been sitting comfortably in Toulon harbor, as if he were on a pleasant Mediterranean holiday. His ships were safe. His men were relaxed. The French outside were a nuisance at most, until Napoleon's cannons opened up from Leguiette. Suddenly, Hood's holiday was over. The British and Spanish launched a desperate counterattack to retake the high ground. For a brief, terrifying moment, it looked like they might succeed. And in the chaos of that assault, Napoleon was struck. A bayonet pierced his thigh. Any normal officer would have left the battlefield immediately. Napoleon refused. Bleeding, in pain, he stayed. He continued directing his artillery with the calm focus of a man who simply did not have time to be wounded. The French held Leguiette, the British and Spanish, unable to dislodge Napoleon's guns, ran out of options. Hood gave the order to abandon Toulon. Ships were set on fire as the foreign forces fled. The harbor that had welcomed them with celebration was now engulfed in flames as they retreated in defeat. Toulon was free. But victory always has a dark side. The Republican forces that poured into Toulon were not feeling merciful. Thousands of royalists were executed in the brutal purge that followed. The revolution showed no mercy to those it considered traitors. Even Napoleon, for all his brilliance, could not stop the rage of a revolution. But for Napoleon Bonaparte, personally, Toulon was everything. It was the moment he stepped out of the shadows and into the light of history. His plan had saved the French Mediterranean fleet. His artillery had driven out the British Empire. His vision had succeeded where every other commander had failed, and his reward? Promoted to Brigadier General. At 24 years old. Not bad. For an unknown artillery officer from a small island nobody had ever heard of. As he watched the British ships disappear into the horizon, it is not difficult to imagine Napoleon already thinking further ahead, already planning, already dreaming. Toulon was not a destination, it was a beginning. Here, on this smouldering battlefield, the world caught its first real glimpse of the man who would one day make emperors tremble and redraw the map of an entire continent. History is rarely decided by the mightiest armies. It is decided by the sharpest minds. And that is where we leave Napoleon for today. From a nobody artillery officer, to the hero of Toulon, to Brigadier General, all before his 25th birthday. Episode 4 is coming, and in it, Napoleon Bonaparte will be handed command of an entire army, a starving, exhausted, demoralized army that nobody believed in. And he will take that broken army into Italy and make history. You do not want to miss it. If you made it this far, you are exactly the kind of person this channel was made for. Hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. And before you go, I have a question for you in the comments. Napoleon was just 24 years old when he outsmarted the entire British Navy, got stabbed in the leg, refused to leave the battlefield, and still won. Meanwhile, most of us can't even get out of bed when we have a mild headache. So tell me honestly, what is your best excuse for not achieving your goals today? I am reading every single comment. Until next time.